Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today we're going to be talking about mental health and incarceration. I have Gustavo Ayala on the show today, and he's going to be sharing his story. Stay tuned. Thank you for being a guest on our show today. I always like to start off by thanking the guests because I know people are busy, and just taking the time out of your schedule just to come and share your story, I really appreciate it. Why don't we start off by you telling, just kind of telling a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background.
Okay, well first I appreciate the opportunity. My name's Gustavo. I'm here because I've been incarcerated on and off. I want to say I started my jail career at the age of 35. I'm 45 now.
Wow, you do not look 45.
Thank you very much. I always tell myself if I would have took care of myself a little bit better, I could have probably looked even younger. But unfortunately, I have a past, but I definitely don't use that past to determine my path now.
Exactly.
So I'll start here. I was diagnosed with mental health disorders at the age of 30. I was taken to a facility against my own wishes. So in there, I was diagnosed with multiple diagnoses, and it was just a very odd time for me because at the time I was drinking quite a bit. So I just figured out I was just an alcoholic. I was a drunk. So I was diagnosed. I was put on meds. I was inpatient there for 7 days. Then I did an outpatient treatment. I gained nothing from it. I left the outpatient services, and I was still just a state of disarray. I didn't understand what the diagnoses meant. Is it okay to share what diagnoses?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you, are you okay with sharing your
diagnosis? Absolutely. So one was bipolar disorder, and the other one was borderline personality disorder. And to me, it was just vague to me. There's like, what does that mean? And the meds that I was prescribed just kind of put me in almost like a fog. So I felt like my personality wasn't there. So I refused to take my meds. And my family were disappointed because I stopped. So they felt that I didn't care about me getting better. And so, but at that point, to me, it didn't matter. I felt like I was losing a part of myself, my identity.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I continued to drink. And that carried on until just 2 years ago. A little over 2 years. I've been in recovery for over 2 years. But during that time, I still led a pretty normal life. I had a job, I got married, I had kids, bought a house. Everything appeared from the outside looking in normal, but internally it definitely was not. I was in a lot of pain. I was just a lot of frustration, a lot of anxieties. I didn't know how to deal, so I just drank. I just drank. So I started my jail career. I got a DUI, and but they counted as a wet and reckless because I was right at the legal limit at the time. And it was basically a slap on the wrist. Did no jail time, paid some fees. Then 6 years later, I got another one in 2007. And 2 years passed from that, and I got two more back to back in 2010. So they're 10 days apart.
So this was this related to your drinking?
Just just drinking, and just I think I was just lashing out. I was just frustrated with just life in general, and I just didn't know how to handle any problems.
Yeah.
So I drank, and unfortunately for me, I drank and I drove.
So, okay, so I want to back a little bit.
Okay.
So you was diagnosed with bipolar and another diagnosis later in life.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about your childhood.
Okay.
I mean, because I'm trying to figure out, was there symptoms as a teenager, as a child, or?
Oh, absolutely.
How was that for you?
As a child, I remember as my earliest memories of having anger bouts.
Okay.
Just having rage. And it's funny, I was speaking to the camera lady, and I was telling her how I just moved back into my mother's house. And so we're doing work there. That's the house I grew up in. And there's holes in my old bedroom from a child. So I was already punching walls.
Okay.
So I had anger. And a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. I was always worried. At nighttime, I had a hard time unwinding. As a child, even, my thoughts would just run, and I never understood why. It really didn't affect me in my daily activities. I thrived in school. I had good friends. I played baseball, but internally, when I was alone, I noticed that, in hindsight now, that I had some issues, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I see them more prevalent now, looking back, because I see those displaying themselves again now that I'm in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of relate the two, and it kind of just brings everything full circle for me.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe some OCD, checking the doors constantly, not happy how I'd write my name on my assignments. I would erase until I got it just right. So just things like that, nothing major.
So, did your family, like your mom and whoever was around you as a circle of support, did they notice any, what we would call, quote unquote, maybe abnormal behavior coming from you at all, or?
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of funny you say that, because I had my one sister that was really close to me. She was the one that did notice.
Okay.
Fortunately, she took her own life when I turned 8 years old.
Okay.
And she was like that. She was the closest sibling to me in terms of we kind of related to one another, because our personalities were similar. But I kind of grew up in a house where I spent a lot of alone time, even as a child.
Okay.
My father was always in and out. He was an alcoholic. My mother worked. She was a field worker. You know, a Mexican. She worked out in the fields. And there was no shame in that, but she was gone most of the days, long hours. My brother, he was doing his own thing. My sisters were married. So I spent a lot of alone time. So I think my behaviors kind of went unnoticed.
Yeah.
And then I secretly started to drink at a young age.
Yeah.
And I noticed that some of my social anxieties kind of diminished.
Yeah.
I felt more comfortable, more loose.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked how people reacted to me in terms of that. But in terms of anyone noticing, I think the only thing I can remember as a child is, you're getting on my nerves, you're too hyper, go settle down, go to your room.
Yeah.
They basically just get away from me, pretty much,
Yeah.
But it didn't hurt my feelings at the time, because I thrived on my own. I did good.
Okay.
I did good. I was a latchkey kid, so to speak.
Okay.
Latchkey kid back in the 80s. You went to school, you came home to an empty house pretty much, and you let yourself into the home.
Okay.
So that was my upbringing.
Okay. So do you think if you had like your mom was at home more, or your dad, somebody was around more, just in your space, so to speak, do you think that you would have potentially have gotten help that you may have needed at that time, like with anger that you talked about, that you displayed, help with anxiety and things like that? Do you think that if they would have seen these characteristics coming from you, so to speak, do you think that they would have kind of sat down with you and talked to you and invited you to get some help?
Absolutely. I feel that perhaps not in the sense of getting me help, but just knowing that they acknowledged it and they were okay with it.
Okay.
I think as children, we just need some type of acceptance and love, obviously. I think that's the key to everything.
Yeah.
Just some type of affection. And, no knock on my family and my parents, but there wasn't a lot of affection in the house.
Oh, I understand.
And so it's, and that translated to later on in life for me as an adult. There was an affection-free zone, so to speak. And so it was cold environment, but the love was there in terms of cooking and
Yeah.
The structure, I guess, because, I came home and the house was, we had a nice house. We had everything we needed except for the affection and the love and that attention that a child needs.
Yeah.
So I definitely think my path could have been different with that set in place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how the environment that I grew up in, dysfunctional family, mother never, ever told us she loved us.
No, absolutely not.
But we knew she did because we had a roof over our head, she cooked, she did what she had to do to take care of her kids. My father was an absentee.
Yes.
But it was just, I know all of us wanted to hear that. We wanted to hear her tell us that she loved us. We wanted that hug. We wanted to feel that her warm embrace, but it was absent, And, it's okay thinking back now, because at least for myself, I feel like, I turned out pretty good, But unfortunately, I think that kind of hindered some of my siblings in a way where a lot of them, are not being as productive in life as they could be.
Yes.
So that's unfortunate. But so let's fast forward a little bit to the incarceration, because you talked about you went to jail. So have you ever been incarcerated at all? And if so, what was it related to?
It was related to DUIs. So 2010, it was February 4th, I got my third DUI.
Okay.
February 14th, 10 days later, I got my fourth DUI. So at that point, I was incarcerated and I had to deal with the consequences. So I was given a 16-month sentence. So it equated to 8 months because the county does half-time. And so this is coming from a man that, lived other than being alcoholic and, dealing with issues, but I still thrived, like I had things that people appear to want in life, And so I went from that to losing my freedom, and I pretty much lost everything at that point.
Yeah.
Because I had to do 8 months.
Yeah.
And so I lost my house, I lost my family, lost my job, I lost my connection to the outside world, and that was devastating. You know, that made me feel the most hopeless I've felt ever.
Yeah.
And I've lost people in my family, and that's hopeless. But that's an end to something. So when I lost, the walls you stare at in the cells they're cinder blocked, and that was my reality.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time coping with that.
Yeah.
And dealing with now going in there with a lot of anxiety and a lot of isolation. The first 2 months, it was horrible.
Wow.
And that's what that's why this topic is what we're talking about, mental illness, in terms of incarceration, because there's people in more severe than I am.
Yeah.
And here I am. I felt like I had things well managed, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I struggled.
Yeah.
Initially.
Yeah. So during your intake process, when they first booked you, did they go over it? Did you have to fill out forms? Did they ask you if you had any mental health conditions, any health conditions, or?
So yeah, for my intake, and let me go backwards a little bit. So I did 8 months, but overall I've done about 2 years.
Right.
In and out, because I violated. And so that first intake was surreal for me because I was in shock and disbelief. So, but the intake process is you go in and you get booked and you see a nurse. It's in LVN, I believe, and they check your blood pressure, they check everything medically, and then they do ask you, are you suicidal?
Yeah.
And I said no, and they asked you if you have any mental disease, and I said no.
Oh, okay. So they did.
They do ask.
Okay.
They do ask. So there are services available to you.
Wow.
But Sacramento County is a big facility, and they house a lot of inmates. So even though they provide services, it's still not enough.
So I'm curious. So why did you tell them no when you know that you potentially was going to need some help?
I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know why. I didn't know the process.
Okay.
Maybe out of fear. Maybe out of stigma. I mean, be with inmates, and I had no idea. I just didn't know idea of the environment I was going into.
Right.
So just in that moment, I said no, because in that moment I didn't feel like I was deranged or suicidal or anything. I just was I was intoxicated.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to kind of get the process over and thinking that I was going to get bailed out, and I thought it was going to be temporary. I didn't think I was going to be there and stay there for 8 months.
So when reality set in and you realized that, oh man, like I'm going to be here for a while, what was that like for you, and what did you do to start accepting the fact that, okay, I'm going to have to do 8 months here?
Hopeless, because they put you in the cell for 23 hours. Well, actually, my first week, I was in the cell for 24 hours.
Wow.
You don't get out. And that's, and you're isolated. And for a person that has, you know, some issues with claustrophobia and whatnot, it's terrible. It's terrible. So you're just in that moment thinking, I just need to get out. Yeah. You're not really thinking about the big picture. And so my reality became when I got a court date.
Okay.
So a week went by, then I have a court date, and I know what my consequences are going to be. And then I understand that I'm in here because of what I've done. So that's when you start to kind of settle in. And the jail system is set up for, it's all in steps. It's intake, and then you get taken to a floor until they figure out what they're going to do with you, until they can classify you. Once you get classified, you get moved downstairs. And once the classification clears and you have a court date, then they move you to another place where you're more, it's more structured. You're in a population where it's not ideal for you, but you're within similar inmates.
Yeah.
And then once you get sentenced, and then you get moved in-house to where you're going to be for good. So I became very well at that process after the fact, but the first time going through, you just don't know until you're going through it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So did you ever reach out for mental health services during your time of incarceration there?
I did, and what you do is you have to fill out what's called a kite. So it's information that you pass on to the deputies, letting them know what your need is.
Okay.
And at that point, they could provide whatever your services are needed. So it's a slow process. And when you're in a cell, and if you're having something, a panic or any kind of episode, you're advised not, there's a button inside the cell, and I'm talking about Sacramento County, the main jail, and you're advised not to hit the button. Wow. Because the sheriffs become upset.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so if you hit that button and you're with an inmate that doesn't have your same issues, then it's a problem for them as well. Because that cell is going to affect your cellmate as well. With that situation that you're having can affect him.
Right.
And so everyone's about privilege there, and so you don't want to lose privileges.
Wow.
So it's set up so that you don't really reach out. So it's, even though there's services there, it's set up so, this is just my personal experience.
Yeah.
It's set up so they just want to keep you managed, pretty much.
Yeah.
So when I did reach out for services, you know, I was having a lot of anxiety or whatnot, and I got the kite out stating that I needed some help. I saw a medical doctor. It wasn't anything with mental health. And they just prescribed me a medicine.
So nothing to really assist you with the issues you were having?
No.
Wow.
So I got a medication that made me more anxious, and it just made my symptoms worse. And so at that point, I just opted to not take the meds, and I just shut down and just dealt with whatever I was feeling, and I just turned into an inmate.
Wow. Wow. Did you see any, like, I mean, were you involved, or I shouldn't say that, that's the wrong question, but did you see other inmates in there potentially that had mental challenges and their issues was not being addressed as well?
Absolutely. So when I hit the general population, so they say, and I'm like in my pod where I'm going to be housed, there's gentlemen there that are reaching there, and they have issues, and to me it's astounding how they've made it through intake, through the whole process, and now they're being housed and they are having issues.
Wow.
So there's like 3 steps before they're being housed. How were they not assessed as having issues? I mean, you're talking about schizophrenia, you're talking about people talking to themselves,
right?
People hurting themselves. You know, and I understand that. I guess it's kind of hard because it can be masked by people coming in and they're under some type of substance.
Right.
And so I can see how a professional can assess that as, oh, they're just coming down or coming off of something.
Yeah.
But you know, these people have been here at least a week now, and they're still, you can tell that they're not in a stable mental state.
Yeah.
But yet they're housed with the general population.
Wow.
And so it's amazing.
Yeah.
They just fall through the cracks, and it's not. I feel like it's not the fault of the staff.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just it's overwhelmed with the population that they can't handle.
Yeah. So do you feel like the staff is trained to deal with inmates who come in with mental health diagnoses?
I think initially, so in 2010 when I first started going in, I feel like they were not, but I can't speak on behalf, 'cause I don't know the training process, just about what I've read and reports that I've read, and maybe they have maybe a vague training.
Yeah.
But seeing how they were handling inmates that are having, it's obvious that they have mental health issues, but they're just being handled as a disruptive inmate. So there's sometimes aggressive manners taking place. Now I can't say that for all inmates, because there's definitely people that have issues and they're handled as such. There's folks that have severe mental issues, and they'll get treatment.
Right.
But later on, as I was going in and out of jail for 6-7 years, money started coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I know that Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, they created a system with UC Davis. So we have more professionals in the jails.
Right.
And some of the severely mentally ill inmates were being sent to UC Davis Med Center. So there was help there, but I still feel like it's just too overwhelming with the population, because I don't want to go back into statistics or whatnot, or even with info that I got, but AB 109 was a system created releasing inmates from the state system and sending them to the county system.
Yeah.
So you're just dealing with another type of inmate that also have, so if you release 100 inmates, about 20 of those are going to have mental health issues.
Right.
Now you're flooding the counties with those inmates on top of your own. And so even though there's funding provided and there's more resources available, it's still not enough. You don't have enough help.
Yeah.
The process is there, but it's not a big enough process for the work that's involved.
Yeah. I think that any job, well, let me say that, especially law enforcement, let's focus on that. I think that people who go into pursuing a law enforcement career, I think that intense training, rigorous training definitely need to be implemented so that they can know how to deal with people who have mental health diagnoses. Yes. I'm sure in the past, police officers have probably arrested, people who had diagnoses, and they was probably treated as if they didn't, and probably was incarcerated, and when things could have been handled a little bit differently. What do you think we need to do as a community to advocate so that people that work in the law enforcement field can get education and training around mental health and diagnoses? Like somebody like myself or you or other people, like what can we do to make sure or advocate so that that can happen?
I think I'll acknowledge before we go there, I will acknowledge that Sac County, they did create a mobile crisis support team.
Yes, they do have that.
So they do have that, and so it is kind of creating a balance, like you stated, an officer showing up to a scene where maybe someone's mentally unstable.
Yeah.
And now they're able to assess the situation instead of just incarcerating.
Right.
So I think there's I think you and I think this is a good platform.
Yeah.
To, I'm not trying to create a negative personification out there about the law enforcement, because it's not really something they can control if they don't have the ways or the means.
Exactly.
So I think this mobile crisis support team, I think it's a good start.
Yeah.
Because they'll have a medical professional, they'll have a deputy from Sacramento County, or they'll have a police officer, and they'll have, and this is what's I think integral for me, they also have a peer support member.
Correct.
Which is the path I've chose now.
Yeah.
So that's something I can I can have an input there because
Yeah.
I'm a peer support.
Yeah.
Right? So now I can go there and I can be a part of this team.
Yeah.
And I can speak what we're speaking on this level.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you have to be on the forefront of this. So
Yeah. And they also have the mental health court as well.
And yes.
Which is a huge asset
Yes.
To the criminal justice
Yeah.
system, because it gives people a chance to, kind of get a second chance in a sense. They
Yes.
could. I know they put something like goals in place and put like a plan in place for
Yes.
some
Yeah.
people, and if they follow their plan, then they do have a graduation and they kind of drop the charges or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's needed.
And I think what's needed is, and it's easier said than done, obviously, but like you said, the mental court is a good system.
Yeah.
And I think when you're in the system and and if you have to go through the process, you're an inmate, I think there needs to be more involvement with like pre-release. Okay, we're going to send this inmate out into the world again. Let's set them up with outpatient services. Let's set them out with their meds.
Mm-hmm.
They're just sent out and they're medicated, and then now they hit the streets.
Right.
They have nowhere to go. They have no resources. They have no meds. So they have nowhere to live, nothing to eat. So it's just going to be a matter of time before that person comes back into the system. So I think there's needed to be something implemented where, just do some pre-screening before they're released.
Yeah.
See the state of mind and follow up with that. And I'll say that, I've been incarcerated also with RCCC, Real Consumers Correctional Center,
Okay.
the one in Elk Grove. It's still Sacramento County, and their system there was good.
Okay.
Because I was going through, and this is what I hope for is I went through a program. It was like a support group. It was called Relapse Recovery. The name doesn't matter. I just wanted to be part of anything.
Yeah.
And is it okay to mention the gentleman's name that was running
Yeah.
the show? His name was John Donovan. Okay. And that man planted a seed in me that created a sense of hope for me
Yeah.
in a very hopeless state. And I think there needs to be groups like that, because there's a lot of NA, AA, Bible groups, and I'm not knocking any of those, but we're all individuals, I think, and we all learn and we can all recover, take different paths.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be implemented, where we have more groups that kind of cater to the diversity in the jails, because Sacramento is a diverse county, and the jail is a microcosm of our outside world.
Yeah.
It's there. So I think that man, John Donovan, did a great job of. It wasn't like AA. He just wanted to create like a self-awareness in yourself.
Yeah.
And that led to a path of recovery.
Yeah.
And so because of that program, I went through a pre-screening before I got released, and I was set up. Because at that time, I had no insurance. They set me up with Medi-Cal. They set me up with food stamps.
Wow.
They set me up so when I left, I was in a decent state, able to survive.
Yeah.
And so I credit that to RCCC.
Right. Nice.
So that was nice.
So what other challenges do you think the jails face in regards to mental health? I definitely know that a lot of them are understaffed.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some jails are, the staff does not have the proper training. Can you think of anything else that is a challenge?
I think just the overwhelming, the group of inmates that are coming in. Mm. It's they're just dealing with too many. It's just the jail already as it is. It's flooded. It's maxed out. So you have the inmate population that are with mental health issues. It's just too overwhelming. So I just feel like you just said it in a nutshell. It's just they're understaffed.
Yeah.
And they're just not trained enough, and it's not the right personnel.
Yeah.
I think you have a sheriff deputy, and he's there to be a deputy.
Yeah.
But I think you need other personnel there. You need other professionals that know how to deal with mental health. That's their specialty.
Exactly.
I think you need to reach out and look outside the box, and maybe you have LVNs in there, and you have sheriff deputies, and you do have some mental health professionals. I think you need a unit that's large. They do have a unit on site in the jail, but it's not big enough.
Okay.
Because it's a medical facility. I think they have 19 beds.
Okay, wow.
And you're housing 3,000 inmates.
Wow.
So I think either they set up a jail system that's dealing with only mental health inmates only, or they just need to staff professionals that deal with that only.
Yeah. So are the inmates that has mental health diagnoses, are they segregated, or are they all, with the general population?
So for the most part, the ones that are severely mentally challenged or that illnesses, they're segregated.
Okay.
So I know that segregation for someone that has schizophrenia, that's not good. I'm not a professional, but I know that my being segregated, I didn't do well.
Okay. So you feel like, so that makes sense. So you feel like it should be more so like on a case-by-case basis, because you felt more comfortable with the general population.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, because you know that there's others like you there.
Right.
I think when you're incarcerated, most of us we all have some type of challenge.
Correct.
And it's just growing up, and it starts from the youth, we just suppressed everything that we knew that was wrong, but we just lived with it, and you just learn to deal with your issues.
Right.
And what I've discovered, that all the inmates in there had issues.
Correct. Yeah.
That's just in the circle of the people that I got to know, and I got to know a lot of them.
Yeah.
And we all had issues.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the ones that don't have issues are the ones that aren't normal, so to speak.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not trying to put a stigma on it at all, but it's just the reality.
So I'm trying. So earlier in the conversation, you said when you first went in, did your intake, that you did not disclose that you have a mental diagnosis after the fact that they asked you. And you kind of talked about how you didn't know the environment, how things was going to be.
Yes.
So is that a form of self-stigmatizing? And the reason I'm asking you that, because you felt like you want to be in the general population like everybody else.
Yes.
And so do you feel like you kind of stigmatize yourself in a sense, or you just like,
I absolutely.
Okay.
I did. But in hindsight, I'm almost grateful that I did, because once I got to know the ways of the intake and the booking, I thrived better in the general population.
Okay.
Because I knew that we were all very similar.
Right.
And we all shared the same stories.
Exactly.
So now, like I said, in hindsight, I'm grateful that I went that route.
Yeah.
And I was more comfortable with not segregated and not medicated.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that too, because we advocate and fight for the rights of people in general here in the state of California, whether it's somebody that have a disability or disabled disability, or someone have a mental health challenge or whatever. The state of California, we're really strong advocates about making sure that people have their independence, making sure people their voices heard, making sure they get the services that they feel is needed for themselves. But we also, on one hand, we fight for people that have mental health diagnoses. We fight that that they maintain their own independence. But you wanted to, you didn't really want that piece, from what I'm getting. You didn't really want that piece attached to your name being in prison.
Absolutely.
But there are people who have a mental diagnosis that is in prison, would have benefited from being segregated from the general population, and some of us do feel like that there do need to be more education and training for law enforcement with dealing with mental health people that comes in the system.
Yes. And it's a challenge too, because there are people that actually fake diagnoses just so they can get medicated.
Wow.
So you're dealing with those people as well.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a challenge for law enforcement, because the way they see it, I think, is you're in jail, just deal with it.
Yeah.
Pay for your consequences, or these are your consequences that for the crimes you did. So you know, I feel like I'm just kind of like a rare form that came from it because I thrived there.
Yeah.
And like you said, I learned a lot about myself because
Yeah.
I became self-reliable and I dealt with my issues, not medicated, and in the worst environment. You know, so once I really got onto the floor and I was around a lot of gangbangers, a lot of this, but I was able to mingle and I thrived.
Yeah.
And it really showed me, it displayed a lot of me.
Yeah.
And I share this all the time with my own wife and my family. Like, who would have thought that me would have thrived in jail?
Yeah.
And I did. And it led me toward the path I'm going now. So I took that. That's a big part of my path. And I take it as a part of my recovery.
Yeah.
And now I'm hoping I can build on that. And like, I want to be in the jails. I want to advocate. I want to go in and I want to research and I want to write notes down and see what the problems are, whether they're the positive, whether they're the negatives, you know?
Yeah.
And there's an agency in the state of Washington, I think they're called AVID. It's an acronym for AVID. And they're big in the state of Washington, especially in Seattle. And there's a group of folks that are going into the jails and they're interviewing inmates with mental illness. And they're talking about what you and I are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But several, you know, females and men, and they're talking about, you know, they're talking to inmates with severe mental illnesses and the ones that aren't so severe, and they're coming up with a plan, and they're presenting this, so to kind of display the need for help.
Yeah.
And I think we in California need to do something similar to that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there hasn't been, but I think it needs to be more prevalent, and I think we need to get a group of people to go into the jails.
Yeah.
And have this conversation.
Yeah, yeah. So you going in the system, not being a gang member, I'm assuming.
I'm not.
So how was that like for you? Because I know from TV and from different conversations with people throughout my life who've been in and out of jail, you know, the gang population is very strong in the prison or jail system.
It's ran by them pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
So how was that for you? Like, you know, did the inmates that was part of a gang, do they look at inmates who are not or don't belong to a gang? Do they look at them like they're weak? Do they look at like that they are that people like yourself is an opportunity for them to do whatever it is that they may want to do? Like, how was that set up for you?
First few times was frightening.
Okay.
But then as I got more comfortable, I guess, this is what you get out of jail. Just be who you are.
Okay.
Because whether you're in a gang or whether you're whatever you are, they see right through you.
Exactly.
And they do not like fake people.
Okay.
So just be you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it helped me in terms of who I am, because I was accepted.
Right. Okay.
And that's what I'm saying. I thrived. I got to know a lot of these gang members. We ate together.
So are you saying that they kind of you gained their respect in a sense?
I did.
Okay.
And just by being me.
Okay.
And so I earned the respect from them and vice versa. And to me, it's just amazing because that's not how I grew up.
Yeah.
But see here now I am, and I'm sharing stories with people, and they're just people. That's just part of their culture, is, you know. And I'm not saying they're good and they're bad, but they're just people, and that's how they survived on the streets.
Yeah.
And once you go into the jail, that's just the rule of the land. You have to participate because, you know, there's power in numbers. So that's for everything, you know,
Yeah.
jail or outside.
Yeah.
So that's what I learned from jail system. Just be who you are.
Yeah.
Just be real.
Yeah.
And you know, like I always say, don't fake the funk.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
just be who you are, and you'll gain that respect. And I did.
Yeah.
But it took me a while to go, and I don't see any shame in it in saying that I actually became very comfortable going in.
Okay.
Because, you know, I was known. I got to be known, and, you know, a lot of them called me uncle because we could share stories, and, you know, I was always like a older figure for them and giving them advice.
So when you say you felt comfortable going in, so did you get comfortable because your many so like you going in like several times throughout your life, is that what made you comfortable, or just that one incident or being incarcerated?
No, I think going over a period of because I couldn't deal with my realities on the outside world, so I would drink.
Okay.
So I was able to deal with my realities inside better because I didn't have to deal with anything.
So what was going on in your life that caused you to drink like that? I'm just curious, and I'm only asking you that because I have a close friend of mine that, you know, I mean, he's addicted to pain medication. He drinks. He does other things, other forms of narcotic as well. That you know, and that he can't deal with life at the moment. Is what I'm trying to say. And he comes from a very good family. Live at home with his parents, awesome sisters. But he drowns his sorrows away with different narcotics. I personally think that he has a mental health issue going on, but he won't admit to it. We talk about it, but he won't admit to it. And obviously he deals with depression, anxiety, mood disorders, and other things, but he won't admit to it. But he can't sit still. You know, a lot of times he can't sit still, and he got to get up. He got to get up. He walks the mall all the time. It's just, you know, you just kind of like, you know, he needs some help.
Yeah.
He won't go to therapy. He won't go into drug rehabilitation. So he just kind of like, you know. And personally, I think there are times when I think that he's not going to make it. I really think that because I feel like sometimes people enable him. He's very, very crafty at how to try to get what he wants for people that's in his circle of support.
And that's what we do.
Yeah, you know, I think he plays on emotions from his family and different things like that, and he's real good at making different people, especially myself, he'd make it sound like I'm a bad person, say different things about me to them, and then he'll come back and tell me some of the stuff he said, and I'm like, man, you know. But I've grew not to take it personally because I know that I do believe in my heart that he got a lot of stuff going on because I've seen him in a place where he wasn't in this space, and you know, I know him when he's not in a space like this. And I've had people ask me, well, why would you want to be friends with somebody like that? And you know, I'm at a place now. I'm like, I want to be a circle of support and not turn my back on him because I know he really do need help.
And you know him.
Yeah.
And you know his truth. You know who he is.
Exactly.
And I think that's the thing is, as children, we suppress who we are supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because we're, you know, in my family, I was meant to be, you know, hard worker, this and that. My dad was a mechanic, just hard workers.
Yeah.
But I was more intellectual, I think, you know, and I wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to college.
Yeah.
And so I think we suppress these things as kids, and as we become adults, these suppressions want to come out again.
Yeah.
And so whether you have mental illness or not, you know, then you start suppressing those feelings. You start numbing yourself with substance. So it's threefold. You know, you suppress as a child, and that person wants to come out, start drinking. And then it gets to the point where now this person is dependent on it. It's a substance, it's part of you now. Exactly. So it's not, you can't just stop, you know. And you know, just the pressures of being a man or a woman in this life and the what society wants of us, that's a whole nother subject.
Oh my goodness.
And so just that alone is, that'll make a person want to do things to themselves.
I really, really strongly agree with you on that because he comes from a culture where you know, things are done a certain way, you know, and he has, you know, 3 of his sisters are now married. One sister is not, and he's not married. And I really do believe strongly that plays a lot on his mental state because even though the parents are not verbally saying, oh, now you're this certain age and you're not married, but the culture in itself, you know what I'm saying, that nonverbal expectation is what I think bothers him sometimes and stuff. And, you know, it's just one of the things where, like, I'm a very religious person, and I remember having a conversation with him, and I told him, I said, well, you know, Jesus was a Jew, but he did not allow his culture to dictate what type of man he was going to be. He was obedient to his father, which is God. You know, he's obedient. So, you know, the scribes and Pharisees, they had their own way of doing things and stuff like that. He actually went against that, which ultimately led to his death in the end.
Yeah.
But, you know, I kind of talked to him about that early on, you know, but being an African-American male, you know, there's certain expectations that my culture has for us, but guess what? I don't follow that. Yeah, I'm an individual before I'm anything, you know. And so I think a lot of people fall into that, what you described. So.
And that's what it's about. You know, unfortunately for me, it took me a long time to finally realize that I am an individual.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be my true self, my true authentic self.
Yeah.
And I've lost many of friends because of that.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that means they weren't my friends.
Yeah.
So that's just what it is. You know, your friend, you obviously care for them, and that's important. So for me, it came from me to want to go into recovery.
Yeah.
And being forced into recovery was never going to work because I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And your friend's not ready.
No, he's not ready.
And there's nothing.
He'll tell you he's not ready.
Yeah. And there's nothing you can do about it, which is unfortunate. But just care for him and pray for him. So and if he does go into recovery, you will be a huge part of his life because you never left his side.
Yeah.
And that happened with my wife.
Yeah.
Everyone said, "Why are you staying with this man?"
Yeah.
Because she knew who I was.
Yeah.
And so here we are. You know, we rejoice. You know, in the eyes of God, we got married, and you know, we're a unit.
Yeah.
She stayed by my side.
Yeah.
So I value that.
Yeah.
So that's important. Everyone needs that person that stands by their side. So you're doing a good thing.
Yeah.
But he's not ready.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's that's unfortunate. But so we lose people like that sometimes, you know, and but it's up to that individual.
Right. Exactly. Well, we've run out of time.
Okay.
And thank you so much for being on our show.
Absolutely.
That's it today for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, if you would like a DVD copy of the show, or if you would like to be a guest on our show, please dial 916-366-4600. Thank you.